Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Autism Family Life podcast and blog. My name is Corey and I am your host, and I wanted to get this first episode started off with one of the main reasons why I started the podcast, and that was because I wanted to be open and honest about our family's experience and our family's journey throughout the autism parenting journey. So the first thing I wanted to start with was there was just one thing I wish someone could have told me after my daughter's autism diagnosis. Because let me tell you, when my daughter was diagnosed way back when, I was an absolute mess. So much had changed, but hadn't changed after receiving those official statements from her developmental pediatrician. And as much as I could have been in denial, instead I went into some sort of action. And maybe I still didn't deal with it as best as I probably could have, and there were still things that I could have done better. And, looking back, there are a few things that I wish someone would have told me, which is why I want to say these things to you. And the first thing was so simple, but I think it really would have meant so much in the grand scheme of things. And it's simply this: absolutely nothing had changed. But yet, it seemed everything had changed, but it was still so true. Nothing had changed. I was still her mom, and she was still my daughter. But now we had this additional diagnosis of autism to deal with. And while that brought about such a world of questioning and uncertainty about the future, she was still my daughter. So in stride, I would just learn to take things as they'd come. So looking back, I wish I had known this. And looking back, I wish someone had told me this enough that I would have believed in it so strongly that nothing could have shaken my conviction. Because it was true. Even on those days that it seemed that nothing was going right, on those days that I just wanted to curl into a ball and hide in the closet and cry, nothing had changed. There were other things, of course, and off the top of my head, these are probably the most important things that I would say to someone after they received an autism diagnosis for their child. It's not the end of the world. You do need to take care of yourself. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. There is no cure because autism is not a disease. I will repeat that again. There is no cure because autism is not a disease. So don't try to change your child for the world, but change the world for your child. Build a support network and find like-minded individuals. So really, it was just these simple things that I wish someone would have told me, that it was going to be okay. And to always remember that nothing at the heart of it all had changed. Yes, there are a lot of new things to take in, and a lot of it is probably going to seem pretty overwhelming at first, but in time, it does get easier, or at the very least, you learn how to deal with them. But your child is still your child, and that is something that is never going to change. So that brings me to a couple of more things that you can do after receiving this autism diagnosis. And, I used to say it all the time, that autism changed my life, but it's not really autism specifically. It was all the things that came with it. And, there are good things and there are bad things. And I have to reiterate and tell you, nothing has changed. And I also want to let you know that life doesn't end when you find out that your child has autism. So while you may not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel just yet, it's still there. So here are another 4 tips for you. And I want you to keep in mind about all the things that are happening when you get that diagnosis. So you might be wondering about the specifics, And this is individual from state to state and really also depends on the age of your child. So what happens after you get the autism diagnosis? For me personally, here is what happened. And it was a whole new thing. It was a whole new bunch of experiences and learning to reconcile my own emotions and my own feelings. But what I would like to tell you as someone who has been there now on this journey for almost 18 years, 15 formally with my daughter, is this. You're going to learn new languages that are both related to autism and related to the special education process. You are going to learn how to become an advocate for your child. You're going to learn to put everything in perspective if you don't already do it. You are going to learn the depths of your patience and your strength. You're going to learn how to negotiate, and you are going to learn to celebrate the simplest things in life. And there's really so much more, but I have learned, just those things as the most immediate. And when it comes to actually dealing with the diagnosis on a personal level, if you are feeling and are overwhelmed by so many of your emotions, you may feel like you are grieving. And I understand and acknowledge fully that yes, your child is still alive, but for some of us, we do go through this disenfranchised grief process. And if that's you, then yes, it's okay to grieve, and it is normal to grieve. If it's not something that you're going through, great, but don't marginalize somebody else's feelings on it. The next most important thing that you can do is to build up your support network. So this could be in addition to your existing support network or outside of it and specific to autism. Don't feel pressured to tell your friends and family until you're ready to do so. And then, also begin researching and reading. That was one of the things that I did right off the bat because it helped me, and quite honestly, it was one of my coping methods. There's also 3 things that I would like you to avoid doing. And the top thing is the wallowing in guilt. And yeah, that comes for some of us too. Sometimes I do still deal with this parental guilt, but it helps me, to allow myself these little moments and then move on. Don't be ashamed, because your child is still your child. And don't give up hope. In spite of how long some of the nights might be, or how many bumps in the road you might hit, it will get better. It might not seem like it immediately, and sometimes you might have to examine things in a new way to see the positives, but they are there. So receiving this initial autism diagnosis, it can be heartbreaking, it can be devastating, and it can be mind-blowing. This is not always a walk in the park. Autism can be downright ugly, but it can also be beautiful and inspiring. At first, it may seem like autism and everything that comes with it just takes over your life, but it doesn't have to define your life. Yes, part of my world does revolve around it because it's part of my life, but it's not everything, and it's certainly not everything that my daughter is. So don't give up hope, because it will get better. You may not always think it's going to get better, and sometimes you may have to squint a little to see the good, but it is there, I promise. This journey will not always be easy, but you already love your guide. So I just want to thank you for joining me on this very first episode of the Autism Family Life podcast and blog. You can find us on YouTube or wherever it is that you get your podcast, be that on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or on SoundCloud. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to coming and talking to you again soon.